And now I would like to introduce again Mr. Tomaš Svoboda. He's from the Institute of Translation Studies from Univerzita Karlova, Czech Republic. And he's actually a member of board member of EMT, and also a member of executive board of Czech Union of Translators and Interpreters. And in his informal communication, he likes to use Moravian dialect of Czech language, like we do in Ukrainian when we use Western dialects. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, what is your sugar level after lunch? I hope you can concentrate. My question, I would have a question to ask you first of all. Please raise your hands. Who represents the academia here in the room? Very nice. All right. Looking forward to the exchange. Okay. And let me please see your hands who teaches a translation course. Okay, very nice. Okay. I would like to share some know-how that we developed at the Institute of Translation Studies, Charles University in Prague, when it comes to teaching or preparing, training future translators for their careers in institutional translation. Somebody might think, okay, is it worth specializing in? Is institutional translation an aspect or an area where you can specialize and where you can earn your living? I would definitely say so. First of all, one of the reasons why I actually myself introduced this course to our MA students is my personal experience from DGT, European Commission. I worked as in-house DGT translator for 3 years after the accession of the Czech Republic to the EU. And secondly, when I returned back to Prague, I was able to see that with the accession of the Czech Republic to the EU, there was an enormous amount, enormous interest in demand, actually, for EU savvy translators who would have this special knowledge about EU institutions, about EU translation, etc. I think this can become a very interesting niche in the Ukraine as well, because of the approximation and because you can hardly ever escape institutional translation, be it linked with the EU or not. So obviously, institutional translation is really a field which is gaining ground, which is nice to study, and which is also very interesting. Okay, I would like to go through those following topics with you. There's 7 topics that I would like to cover. First of all, I would like to say a few words about the course itself that I'd like to introduce. It's called Translation for International Institutions, quite straightforward. And it's being offered as part of a specialization. We offer, when you want to specialize in translation in our institute on a MA level, you have to choose one of these specializations here, either literary or translation scientific, economic, and administrative texts, or thirdly, actually the translation for international institutions. So the course that I would like to speak about is a main part of this specialization. The course is a 1-semester course, and we offer it throughout the 5 language departments that we cover. Here you have them. I happen to be the head of the German department. First of all, I have prepared this presentation on the basis of the EMT, European Masters in Translations Competence Framework. And I'm so grateful for the speakers of yesterday's afternoon session, because they walked us through all the competencies through the EMT framework and all those aspects which save time today. And in this context, I had a look actually at the very competence framework, at the very document which was referred to yesterday and which you can find online, the EMT competence framework. And when you Control F, when you find for the word institution within the actual framework, you find it on one occurrence, and it's pretty important here. Just listen to this. The framework is based on the premise that translation is a process designed to meet an individual, societal, or institutional need. So you actually have the term institutional as part of the definition of translation in terms of its process aspect. So what is translation for EMT competence framework? It's a process, and this process should be designed to meet institutional needs as well. So pretty prominent in the very framework itself. Okay. Back to the course. We actually happen to have the word or the notion of institutions included in the very graduate profile of our MA graduates, future graduates. So this is not just the profile of the course, but this is a global graduate profile of our MA students, regardless of their specialization. So you can see that you can find the institutional aspect, one that we are preparing future translators to be involved in freelance activity, either for direct clients, agencies, or international organizations and European institutions. B, we train our graduates to become in-house employment in national, international, and European businesses, organizations, and structures. So again, a pretty prominent occurrence of this notion of institutional translation within the graduate profile of our MA program, covering all those 5 language combinations that I referred to. And now, the learning outcomes, which you can find on the internet, learning outcomes of the very course now. Students develop competence in institutional translation, which means specifically or especially in EU legislative text, translation into Czech and into foreign language. So we cover both directions in this course. Students learn about the social role of the institutional translator, different translation strategies to meet the client's requirements and to comply with the house style, important. And students learn about quality standards. This is online, so if the presentations will be made available to you, you would always be able to refer both to the syllabus and to some resources that I'm going to refer to in a minute. Now, what topics do we cover in the course? We cover the macro structure of institutionally translated text, which is very important to understand the structure of the texts. Even more important, perhaps, is the intertextuality of texts translated within the institutional area, because not only legal texts, obviously, but especially legal texts are intertextual by definition. We go through the specifics of administrative style and legal style in both the languages that we cover in the course, both directions, and the concept of house style and the implications related to it. So these were the topics. They continue specifically then for EU-related text, and in the EU context, I would perhaps only like to say that we concentrate on the EU situation in the 4 language combinations where it makes sense. With Russian and Czech, which we cover as well, obviously there is not much covered on EU matters. There is as well, but not so much. But that's why the course is called Translating for International Organizations, because, for example, here in the Russian department, they teach, obviously they use other types of text and don't focus on EU matters so much. But, for example, myself and the German department, I have this specialization, or I focus on it very much, on the EU situation. And what I cover is organization of translation services of the institutions, including DGT and other modes of cooperation, the way our graduate can actually cooperate with the institutions, either as in-house translators potentially, if the need is there, or as freelancers, as external providers, which will become more and more important, as you suggested yesterday. The Commission is moving or scaling up the demand for externally provided translations. So this will be a very interesting path to follow for our graduates. Obviously, I cannot forget to mention the manuals and guidelines, style guides for Czech translators, very specific for this context. And I'll also cover EU jargon and the interferences that can result from those systems. Now let's have a look at the competencies that we strive to have our students to acquire. I have underlined competencies which are in line with EMT competencies from the EMT competencies framework. So you can see language, translation, you can see culture, interpersonal competencies, service provision, and technology. So the underlined ones relate to the framework, to the competence framework. Number one, as regards language, we teach some 3/4 of the course with texts that are translations into Czech, L1. The remaining quarter into the foreign language, or whatever you want to call it. The translation competence. Obviously, we do translate. The students have to translate quite a lot, but they also have to revise. We try, within the one semester, we try to use some 6 or more texts, 6 at least. We try to have them acquire search skills, which is very important in terms of the intertextuality I was referring to. We, for example, use Lingui very much because it's a smart corpus tool, actually, for Czech. In Lingui, you find almost exclusively texts aligned from Eurolex. So this is a very nice Eurolex search engine, actually, for Czech. But always you have to check against actual wordings in Eurolex afterwards. And what is very important, to not only show the students all the resources that they are able to use that are there, but also to tell them what's the actual hierarchy of the resources. Because you can find various terms or various variants of a term in various sources. So we compiled an online resource specifically for the purpose of our course. So we have links to Eurolex, to IATE, to the Lisbon Treaty, Maastricht Treaty, the TFEU, combined nomenclature. You will be able to see that it's not only in the specific direction or aligned direction, German, Czech, for example, but here for also Russian versions of the translation. And then, within the resources, we refer to the guidelines for translating EU documents, institutional style, interinstitutional style guide, very, very important, and guidelines for contractors for DGT. And obviously, I also cannot forget the book we co-edited with Lucia Biel. Now, to continue with the competences, culture competence is there too, which means to be knowledgeable about EU matters. We're lucky enough to have a specific course on EU matters. This is a course that can be attended both by translators and interpreters who study a different specialization, but it's on the realia, it's on the culture, it's on the EU matters, decision making and all this stuff. We have the interpersonal competency. We have a specific course on the so-called professional practice, professional practices in the translation profession. I run the course too, and I invite speakers, interesting speakers from the profession or our graduates to speak to our current students and share their knowledge. So we have this covered externally or in other courses. Service provision, we train it within our course to a certain extent. For example, the students work in groups, so it's teamwork. They also are trained within a project setting. And then technology, obviously. We use SDL Trados as our standard CAT tool. The students run at least one of the texts are required to deliver a Trados bilingual file. I tell them how to prepare your reference memory when you're translating a document referring to a specific directive, regulation. It's a good idea to have an alignment in your memory. And I also tell them that you can download, you can filter in Yate specific terminology field, and you can download it, and you can have it as part of your term bank in your SDL and other tool. We also cover Legiswrite, which is a specific tool to check the formatting of Word documents that external translators are sending to DGT. Okay, and I'm about to conclude with the choice of texts, which I find always the holy grail of every translation seminar, translation course, because it really depends on what text you actually pick for the course. First of all, I have to remind my colleagues who actually work together in the other language departments that institutional translation is not only about legal texts. It's not legal translation only. So we try to cover various text types, such as administrative, some specialized, and communication related. You may know that DGT, for example, has a specific translation team who specialize in web translation only, for example. Also, institutional translation is not about EU texts only, obviously. We conceive it very much to be linked with the EU, but not only. But you'll find that also when translating for governmental institutions, the EU aspect is so important, so prominent, that so much is linked with the EU. So not only, but also, and not EU authored only, but also linked with the EU otherwise. And we also try to cover texts concerning other institutions, such as, for example, some Czech department, Czech governmental communication as regards the UN. Okay, now I'd like to share some best practices. If any one of you considers running a similar course, I would definitely recommend you to pick some of those because it's been something that we discovered during the several years that we have taught the course to work very well. We're starting with a short sample translation at the very beginning of the course, which we have the students translate on the spot, and we archive it. We don't comment on it. We just say to them, here's your original, please translate 2 paragraphs. And we come back to it at the end of the course. This is designed to actually motivate or reassure the students and to show them how much they actually have gotten to learn about all the aspects that come into play. And really, they are so amazed at the end of the course. They translate the same 2 paragraphs, and they're so amazed to see which they did wrong in the initial translation. Our instruction is project-based. We have students exchange text. We have students to organize or coordinate projects. We have students to exchange roles, translator, reviewer, administrator. I would definitely advise you on MA level to develop this meta-language competency, which means being able to defend your own translations, your own choices. Translation is a decision-making process, so every translator student should be able to defend the way that they made the choice. It's important because this is what distinguishes the bulk translators from the top ones. The top ones are able to refer to what they did and how they do it. I also use a list of translation mistakes because students can learn so well by mistakes of others. I include an APSO text, the European Personal Selection Office. You can always find some sample text on APSO page so that the candidates actually know what they can expect. And you will be surprised that it's not legislation, it's not legal text at all. It's a journalistic piece of text covering actually EU matters. Very important to have students review some real piece of existing legislation. Have them read 3, 4, 5 pages of a Czech translation of a directive, and they'll be able to actually absorb the jargon or the administrative style. First they will be astonished, and they will get used to it. And they will know that they have to search for every other term, or perhaps every term, every time. And which has really proved very beneficial is direct cooperation with DGT. We're very privileged to be part of the European Masters in Translation as the only institute in the whole of the Czech Republic. So we're able to have our students accepted for internships in Luxembourg, for example, where the Czech DGT's department is located, European Parliament as well, European Central Bank in Frankfurt. Obviously, this is not part of the course. This is not a requirement, but this plays together, or there is a spillover, obviously. Students who are interested can go on to apply for internships there. Then also the visiting translator scheme. We have had several visiting translators from DGT already, and this is always so nice, so useful for students to see living examples of what we are teaching. And we also have very nice contacts with the field office of DGT in Prague. DGT have its field officers around the whole of the EU, and I arrange visits of our students of this particular course to the field office, and they are then faced with the DGT translator, and he's able to show them direct online access into the EU, how it looks, how his workstation looks like, and the tools that he is using as part of his day-to-day practice. And that's it very much. If you'd be interested in anything more, let me know. Thank you.